razgovaramo sa momkom koji nam je došao iz Rusije, ako se dobro sećam iz Novosibirska, pre nekog vremena sad već. Momak koga sam upoznao na jednom eventu u Novom Sadu koji smo pravili recimo prošle godine, koji je u principu služio za spajanje developera, više zajednica game developera. Vrlo interesantnu priču ima, inače momak je prevashodno tech artista, ali je u međuvremenu dobio jednu super priliku da bude art direktor u jednoj kompaniji koja se zove K-Play. I ovo predavanje, odnosno ovaj razgovor će biti na engleskom jeziku, samo prosto da se to razumemo, nadam se da to neće predstavljati neki veliki problem. Tako da, dame i gospodo, sad nam se pridružuje Igor Rashkuev. Igore! There's your seat, boy. And your mic.
Hey.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Came from Novi Sad?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're based there?
Sorry?
You're based there?
Yes.
Yeah, for how long now?
I think it's been 3 years.
3 years already?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So when we met, it was 2. I guess last May or something like that, yeah. So into video, I let people know that you were originally from Novosibirsk. Was that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I was born in Novosibirsk and lived there for like first 23 years of my life, I guess, and then I've moved to St. Petersburg. But yeah, Siberia is my home place.
Yeah, and there's Novi Sad now.
Yeah.
We're talking to people making games, and Igor is certainly one of them. There's actually a lot of tech artists in the Russian game development community, as far as I've noticed, at least from the meetups where we used to attend together and met some people. Tech art seems to be pretty a relatively desired way of life. Apparently, maybe I'm wrong, but we'll be talking to Igor about his career in video games and as a tech artist, and lately as something called art director at K-Play, which turned out to be a very interesting opportunity for you that you didn't really see coming, right? And let's talk about. Okay, so let's take this route. Let's talk about something called Into the Radius, or namely Into the Radius 2, which is a game by CM Games. You've joined on the second installment of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been working at the studio for quite a while, but I was in what was called R&D department, and so we're doing different prototypes and stuff, but then it stopped existing, so I've transitioned to the development team of Into the Radius 2, and have been working there for like a year.
Okay.
And I was doing purely tech art. Before that, I was doing more broader things with prototypes and stuff, but at Into the Radius, I was doing tech art specifically. And it was an interesting experience and pretty challenging one, because making VR games is difficult as it's on its own, and tech art in VR games has a lot of interesting challenges and complications and stuff. Also, the game is made with Unreal Engine 5, which supports VR, but Epic, I think, does not really care about VR support that much, so it kind of works. Okay, but not as you would like it to work.
Does that mean it's basically up to you to make it work?
I mean, it kind of works, but then sometimes you find out some issues with some things not rendering correctly in different eyes or whatever. So, yeah, fortunately, we had a engine programmer, so we used our own fork of Unreal Engine, so we were able to fix a lot of stuff. Yeah, but also VR is very demanding for performance. You need to hit 90 FPS on devices like HTC Vive, for example. So you need the game to look very well, and it also needs to work perfectly, because in VR, any kind of frame rate drops can lead to motion sickness.
Right.
So, yeah.
I guess that's the key issue that you're dealing with while working on a VR game, because you kind of directly impact players' health, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? I mean, as a tech artist, I guess you had a lot of, let's say, opportunities to work on improvements of graphics fidelity plus graphics performance to mitigate this risk, right? So it basically puts you in a position where you directly influence someone's well-being, so to say. It's not really only your task, right? It's more of a rendering thing. Does that concern you as a tech artist?
I mean, yeah. An interesting thing is that the audience for the game is... so there is a term called VR legs, is when a person has played VR for long enough, and they have like adapted to it, and so they can experience all sorts of movement in VR without motion sickness. Not everyone can develop it, but some people can, and Into the Radius is kind of a demanding game in that sense, because usually in VR games you have teleport as a general movement, like way you move, because it's the least motion sickness inducing one. But it did not work well for that game, so it has like typical game controls where you press a stick forward and your character walks. And so you need, like, to play the game, you need to be prepared for that, because if you're not, you will get motion sickness very quickly. So I guess our players had lower standards for that, so they could tolerate some frame rate drops because they are just more tolerable to that sort of thing.
So for Into the Radius specifically?
Yeah, well, this is you could say, a hardcore game.
Oh, okay.
So players who play these kinds of game, they can, like...
They're devoted.
Yeah.
Devote their time and resources to actually find their way into the Radius. And your job on Into the Radius too, what I'm curious about as a VR survival game, its reception, its reviews, scores, how did the game do?
It did pretty well. I mean, it had, I think, mostly positive reviews, but it released into early access, so most of those were about like bugs and stuff. But reception was actually pretty good, and there were like a few thousand reviews on release, so
okay.
I'm not sure what the count is now, but yeah, I think it did pretty well, and like the first part had a lot of fans, and they were really looking forward to the second game, so, and they were, most of them I think were happy about it, about the improvements and like the new stuff. So yeah, it did pretty well.
Cool. I think it's a good idea to maybe have a look at what the game looks like. Here we're going to play a trailer for Into the Radius 2 and see what it is. So Katja, Božo, please, if you... It's kind of interesting to think about this game as a VR game, because it certainly looks like something that demands a lot of resources. And I suppose that right now it runs on Quest 3, Quest 2. What was the target device at the time?
Well, it was developed for PC only, and so yeah, everything is from PC gameplay. So it like expects pretty good hardware to run. Yeah.
So, and what was the target hardware? If you were thinking about VR headset, what was the VR headset of choice? Let's say the benchmark.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter because like it runs on PC, so like whatever headset you have, it should work with.
Oh,
that.
Okay.
So
right.
It's more about like your PC specifications.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was Into the Radius 2, and then in the meantime, you also were working on a game called Steam Tactics, which is a completely different thing, like as opposed to Into the Radius 2. What are the origins of the game? What's the story behind it?
So a long time ago, I was working on my personal project when I was just starting out, and so I had the idea of making this steampunk RPG about where you control an airship, and it has like crew members, and you fight sort of turn-based battles, and you level up them, and so on. And so I was working on it for quite a while, a few years, I guess. But then it was my first project that I worked was as a solo developer, so it obviously was overscoped, as first project usually are, and so I wasn't able to manage it. I didn't manage to finish and release it because the game was just too big. So at some point I've decided that I want to finish and release something. So I set a goal for myself for finishing a game in 8 months and release it on Steam. And I've decided to use some assets I already had from this previous project, and I've remade it in this very focused small game that can be done solo in a limited amount of time. Mm-hmm. So it can actually be released and see the light of day and for players to play it. And I did. I actually managed to hit my deadline, and I've released the game. I had to cut a lot of corners, and the scope was much smaller than the previous game. But it actually was in a sense of liberating, I guess, when you do not strive for some perfect, amazing game. You just want to make something. Mm-hmm. And so these limitations actually kind of free you and lower your own expectations and allow you to actually make something and, save some time, use some ready assets, whatever. And so, yeah, I finished the game. I released it on Steam. It did not do very well.
When was the release? What was the release date? I mean, at least a year?
It was 2017, I think.
2017, back then. It's been already 8 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And so this is the kind of project that I was a bit conflicted on because it was a game that was actually done and finished, but I wasn't super proud about it because it was not super impressive. But also, a finished and released game is still better than theoretical amazing
Perfect
game that is never released. So yeah. But then, interestingly enough, at some point I found a small indie publisher who publishes games for consoles. So I thought about, well, maybe I will reach out. And so I did, and he was like, yeah, sure, let's do this. And so I've added controller support to the game, which was not very easy because when you do not design a game with controller in mind, attaching controller support to it is a bit of a challenge. But I did that, and we've released it, and yeah, the game is available on basically all consoles. It was released on PS4, Xbox, and even PS Vita. It was very...
Even PS Vita?
Yeah. I mean,
okay, I think we need to tell people what PS Vita is, because it's been a while.
I've never used one, I've never had PS Vita, so I'm not an expert on these, but the console was still alive back then, so the market was still open, and the game is not very demanding for the hardware, so it was possible to port it to PS Vita, and so my publisher offered to do it, and I was like, sure, why not, let's do this. And apparently, at least there were still communities of people who play on PS Vita and really like that console, and so they were, I guess, happy to see it.
Happy about it, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea how many copies were sold there, because, I don't know, my publisher told me that he does not get, the
analytics and all that.
It's a bit weird, but I don't know.
For Vita, well, who knows? PlayStation Vita was released back in 2011, 12?
I have
Some
no
of that.
idea.
Bonjour. Do you remember when PS Vita? Yeah. Basically, PS Vita is PlayStation portable console, the second generation of PlayStation portable consoles after PSP, PlayStation Portable. So Vita was there for just briefly, I would say. But it's very interesting. So you had nothing to do with porting to PlayStation Vita?
Yeah, I mean, I only added controller support and stuff like that to prepare the game for porting, but everything else was done by the publisher. So
yeah.
It also was ported for Switch, so...
It's on Switch as well. It's on a Nintendo eShop?
Yeah.
Nice. Can we see the trailer for Steam Tactics then? So, Bojo, Katja, let's give it
Rated E for everyone.
How do you feel about this now, all these years later?
I don't know. As I said, I'm not super proud about this game because it was like small and I did not spend that much time on it, and it did not like realize all my ambitions that I had before it. But it also like it's there, it's finished, like it's available, and it's also available on consoles, so it's something. And funnily enough, at some point, my publisher even offered to make a physical run.
Really?
So there were
for PS4?
Yeah, for PS4 there were like 500 copies, and so I still have some discs lying around somewhere at home. So it even has physical edition, yeah.
Nice. So before we move on, we might as well shed some light on what exactly technical art is, because we've been talking about tech art. I don't suppose everybody really knows about what it is. And to better understand your further movements in career, let's talk a little bit about what technical art is. Sometimes people find it hard to kind of define because it's a very, let's say, there's not even a vague definition. It's a very complicated thing, but at the same time, extremely necessary in the industry and very fun because it intertwines the technical stuff that's basically based on rationale, and on the other hand, a lot of artistic sensibilities. So what would you say tech art is?
Nobody knows what is this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, different companies define it differently, and if you look at like job openings for technical artists, you can see anything. Some technical artists are very technical and are more focused on like importing the assets into the engine and setting up LODs and all sorts of very, very technical, low-level stuff. Some technical artists are kind of like graphics programmer light, and they write shaders and basically do some graphics programming. Some technical artists, like for example, whatever I did on Into the Radius, I actually did a bunch of art. For example, I don't know if you remember, there were a bunch of anomalies in the trailer. So I did those because this is it's an art asset, but it uses VFX and some interesting things. So it's not like just a 3D model that a 3D artist can make. It requires some more like in-depth understanding of how tech works.
Right.
So this is also something tech artists do. I also did some VFX, which is usually done by VFX artists. But if you don't have any, then you can float it to your technical artists probably.
Yeah, when we say VFX, we mean visual effects, which is basically the gun muzzle blasts. Explosions,
fire, whatever.
All the kind of things that all belongs to VFX, right? So basically, a tech artist is more or less expected to know everything about tech and everything about art, and then be told what from those fields to focus on.
Ideally, yes. I mean,
ideally, yes. Yeah.
Depends on the person. Some people are closer to the technical side. Some people are more artsy, I guess.
Where do you see yourself in this on the spectrum?
Oh, I don't know. Everywhere, I guess.
Everywhere.
Because like when I was just studying, I first wanted to study in an Academy of Architecture, I guess, to get this sort of art degree. But I've made my decision too late, and it was like the exams are pretty tough. You need to like draw these heads and stuff, and you cannot get those skills in a few months, you know. So I did not do that, and I enrolled into Faculty of Applied Mathematics and Information Science, so I've studied that for a while.
So that's one side, yeah.
Throughout my career, I did all things. So at some point I worked as a concept artist, but then I did some programming, and so in the end I found myself somewhere in the middle doing everything. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Do you feel there's not a single specific thing that you're good at, or are you good at everything?
Yeah, I'm good at everything, obviously. I mean, of course, I'm not like as good as a 3D artist at 3D art probably, but I can do it reasonably well. So yeah.
Okay, so thanks to the very extensive and diverse experience that you've been acquiring over the years, eventually, I mean, you made your first. This is your first Steam Tactics was your first solo project, right?
First finished.
First, let's be clear. First finished, yeah, sure. And then we have another title that, as far as I understood, it was not developed by you only. It's the game called Dalmare.
Yes.
It's a game, it's basically a horror game. We're going to see a trailer in a minute. But before we see that, what is it about and what was your role in the development of Dalmare?
So a few years ago, I've met a guy called Alex here, and we've noticed that we had a kind of similar paths when we had our own small game released on Steam without that much success, and we were both thinking about indie development in like similar terms, I guess. So we were on the same page. So at some point we decided to try do something together. And first we tried working on one project, but then we switched to a different one. It doesn't really matter why, but yeah.
Eventually you ended up on Dalmare.
Yeah, so we were thinking about making a small game. So we wanted to basically repeat this project when we do not start working on some overly ambitious, huge project that stretches for years and is never finished and like it's dropped. So we wanted to make something focused that can we do in some reasonable amount of time, that can be released, that's something that can work in the current Steam market. So we don't just do it for ourselves and that's it. So it can like have some success at least. So we were thinking about different games ideas, and at some point we arrived at making a horror game because well, horrors do well on Steam.
But there's a lot of horrors, right?
Yes.
And what was your kind of reasoning behind, okay, let's do a horror game?
So, like, the first idea was to make a small and focused game that can be done in, like, under a year. And then I think it was an article by Chris Zukowski, a guy who writes about game marketing, and the article was basically called Make a Horror Game. And in the article, he was arguing that horror is a, like, evergreen genre on Steam that does well all the time, basically. So we thought that, well, making a small horror game actually is maybe a good idea. We don't play horror games as much, actually, and Alex always jokes about that he's scared of horror games, so...
So it was a good idea to make a horror game?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically make something that actually scares you.
Yes.
Nice. Shall we give it a look? So here's the trailer for Dalmare. Katja, Bože, please. There's a lot to unpack in this one, so let's spend some time talking about Dalmare. So obviously, it doesn't look like a game that two dudes not playing horror games made. It apparently it demonstrates like multiple iconographic nuances to a typical horror genre. Dolls are scary in their own right, and I guess there was a good starting point. So what I'm getting from the trailer is, you basically work at a doll factory, you need to inspect them, but in a Five Nights at Freddy's kind of way, things go wrong. What's the general idea of the game?
Yeah, one thing I would mention at first is that the dolls were actually made by an artist. So at first it was three of us, but he had some like financial issues, so he had to drop out. But yeah, speaking of Dalmare, so the pitch for the game sounded like Papers, Please, where you work at a scary doll factory.
Nice.
So it all went from there.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we tried different kind of approaches to this, but like the basic idea where you are standing in a sort of workshop somewhere in a factory and you, like dolls come out of a conveyor and you inspect them and you either approve them or disapprove them. It stayed basically as the core concept for the game, and it turned out to actually work reasonably well. And it also played into the current kind of trend of horror games, I'm not sure if anybody follows the genre, but there was the game called Exit 8. It was about basically you are in a Japanese subway and you walk forward.
Through hallways and you inspect for differences, right?
For anomalies, yeah. You look for anomalies. And we accidentally made basically something similar. So that apparently worked well. So, yeah.
And given the fact that it fit into a trend, is Dalmare actually right now doing good on the market?
It did very well.
It did? As far as I've seen, very positive right now on Steam.
It's even overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, so it has reached overwhelmingly positive. All time.
Yes,
all-time
so
reviews.
Like recent one are very positive, and the all-time are overwhelmingly positive. Yeah.
So you're already there, yeah. And there's about 2,000 reviews, based on 2,000 reviews, or maybe even more.
1,200.
About 200.
Slightly below that.
Okay, that's pretty good. So who made the team? I mean, you and your friend. You said Alex.
Yeah. So like at first there were three of us.
Yeah, and then the
Alex
guy.
and I, and there was a guy who was also doing art, but like yeah. But he did the dolls, and dolls are great, and they are like a centerpiece, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, he wasn't able to continue the game, like continue the development, so we had to finish it by ourselves. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically the two of you. In which given time frame?
So at first, our plan was to release the game in 3 months. We were inspired by the story of what's the game? Tattletale, I think. It's also a horror game. It's done by the developers who also made Donut County, and then he worked on Neon White. And he was like, well, we needed some money, so we wanted to make a short horror game, and they made it in 3 months, and it actually did really well. It's like one of the classic horror games available on Steam. So we thought, well, maybe we can also do a game in 3 months. But the issue is that we had also a daytime jobs, so we were only working on it in our free time. So it was not finished in 3 months or even in 6 months, so it basically took a year.
Okay.
But yeah, we were working on and off, so not full time, just like sometimes on some evenings, and sometimes we were very busy and skipping entire weeks not doing anything, so it's hard to estimate the like exact development time. But yeah.
But it took about a year. From the moment you started to the moment of release. And as far as I see here, 24th of October 2024 is when Dalmare came out, right?
Yeah. So the idea was to release it before Halloween. I mean, I guess everyone does that, but we still wanted to. And,
yeah, well.
To also participate in Steam Screen
in the bandwagon,
Fest, yes, event. So, yeah, the game did not do well like immediately, but it's because we did not do that much marketing, because we did not really have any like resources for that and even time for that. So, but yeah, thanks to demo on itch.io, at some point like streamers started picking up the game on YouTubers, and like it started growing and growing and growing, and at some point it actually started doing reasonably well.
So the game got out on Steam and itch.io as well, at the same time, simultaneously?
No, we just released a demo on itch.io before the release, just to like gather wish list and stuff like that.
That's nice. So, and what were the, let's say, key technical, what was your role in making the game? Because there was 3 of you, then the guy, the 3D artist dropped out, and there was 2 of you remaining. And obviously, you need to tackle multiple positions when working on these kind of games, because there's 2 of you, right? There's a lot to do. I'm not sure where exactly the engine is, what you were using, but whichever engine, there was a lot of job to tackle. So what was that you were in charge for?
We were both doing basically everything, because like when there are just 2 of you, you can't really like clearly separate your responsibilities. So I guess Alex was doing more programming, and I was doing more art, but also like we both did everything, because you cannot like clearly separate responsibilities in such a case.
Right. So what was the main challenge for you then?
Well, I guess making the game is a challenge in itself.
Yeah, but on a microscopic level, what would you pick, like the key thing that was to you the most challenging thing? Lighting? Lighting?
You mean technically?
Well, whatever, yeah.
Generally, I guess the most challenging thing is like setting priorities correctly, because for making indie games is crucial, because you cannot do everything. You need to really like pick things that you focus on, and then something that you drop and you do not pay any attention to, because like you can't do everything at once. You have to really like triage, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I would have made a lot of things much nicer if I could, because like an artist and me always want to improve things and make them look more beautiful and polish stuff, but then we really did not have any time for that, so a lot of corners had to be cut.
That's also a very kind of misunderstood and underrated skill, to actually be able to stop yourself in tracks when your personal views and desires about a certain piece is not complete or perfect. Saying to yourself, hey, so I'm not gonna really make this art perfect because I need to go to market. I need to kind of wrap up some other stuff. So I guess a major advantage in being a technical artist, being a rational and a rather creative person at the same time, doesn't necessarily mean a person is schizophrenic, saying it in a very reserved sense. But you really teach yourself to, you teach yourself restraint, I suppose. I'm not a technical artist, so I cannot really correlate, but you teach yourself some restraint where your ratio is sometimes able to kind of directly communicate to your creative being and say like, hey, I don't think we're going to do that perfectly. We're going to do that in another game. But at the same time, the creative one doesn't go like, hey, we don't need maximum performance week here. We have, space to do something nicer on account of impacting performance. This is a PC-only game. Actually, yeah, it's a PC-only game, right?
We are in talks about console version, but
okay.
It's not really announced yet. So.
Okay, this may happen.
Yeah.
Okay. That was Dolmer, and another interesting topic about this is, what was the reception with YouTube influencers and Twitch streamers of the Dolmer? Because people love these kind of games because it provokes a lot of reactions that are very fun for their viewers. So what about Dolmer? How did it go?
So I guess that's why they tell you to make horror games, because there is a lot of YouTubers that are making videos about those, and like they always need more, so they always play new games, and because it's like they need to create a lot of content, and so they need a lot of games, and horror games work very well in that regard for some reason. I don't know, people like watching horror games, I guess. So yeah, the game, as I said, it did not start doing like amazingly well, but slowly it gathered up steam, and right now if you search Dolmer on YouTube, you'll get like the first top views video will be like 4 million views, I think.
Nice.
And then like you'd have to scroll for a while to get a video that has under 100,000 views. So it did pretty well with streamers. And like looking at the reception, people really liked watching it. It did not unfortunately translate to sales as well as I would expect. Because, I don't know, maybe some people just like watching horror games and they do not really want to play those. And watching people watch horror games, right? Play horror games. Yeah. So, I guess maybe some people just, they may not play horror games at all, but they can watch those. I don't know, these are just some of my theories. But yeah, with the amount of YouTube coverage, you could, I would expect a bit more sales, but yeah, I guess they did not convert as well as I would hope. As well as probably Steam recommendations or something else. Yeah, if you look at Steam games, there are some games, usually there are some games with like deep game design and stuff that do not have a lot of YouTube coverage at all, but they still do very well on Steam because apparently like players like it, like those games, and Steam keeps recommending those, and this is what makes the sales. Yeah. And YouTube obviously helps, but it does not like guarantee you anything. Yeah, it's very interesting that horror games have become more appealing to people who weren't very much reserved towards playing them. I remember back about 20 years ago, because I'm a horror game fan, many of my friends, especially female friends, were like, I'm not playing that thing because, I'm going to shit myself. So right now, I guess with YouTubers and Twitch, right now, in the last 15 years at least, people have grown kind of more accustomed to watching people
play certain games and get some reactions from them, because I guess you get fear and comedy at the same time, and it becomes kind of less damaging to your psyche, quote unquote. So that's very good insight. But an interesting thing about your career that you wrapped up Dolmer, and you're now a part of a team that makes a game that's kind of ridiculous in its own right. Can you tell us something about transitioning to K-Play?
So it's an interesting story. So if you look up Dolmer on YouTube and you look at the second most used viewed video, it is from a YouTuber called Kalos.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very popular YouTuber from the US. And I didn't know about his existence before that because I don't really follow big YouTube influencers. So yeah, like we had his video that did really well. It has like 3.7 million views. I don't know, whatever. I mean a lot. So we were glad about it, but then I forgot about it. And then at some point I had to look for a new job. And it's an interesting like chain of different coincidences. So the guy Alex, who I made Dolmer with, he was working part-time on this game.
By K-Play.
By K-Play, yes. And so it turns out that YouTuber, he decided to open his like game development studio.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and so he found like our mutual friend somehow. It's like long. I don't know the like precise story. So our mutual friend was working with him. So at some point they also hired Alex for part-time, and also at this precise moment I needed a new job, and they were looking to change something about their art department. So it was a very interesting coincidence. So I was looking for a job, and they were looking for someone who could do everything art-related. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I'm working on Waterpark Simulator.
It's called Waterpark Simulator. I suggest that we have a look at the trailer. Here we go. It's very interesting to see how you've transitioned from a horror game into something like this. Yeah. I guess, you know, when it's about working in video games, sometimes you don't really choose what you're working on. You've chose Dolmer, but this was just a matter of coincidence, and now you're working on a game called Waterpark Simulator, kind of a ridiculous kind of. It's like Goat Simulator, but water park. This is how I see it. It's not that ridiculous, though, right?
I mean, it is ridiculous, and this was not the intention. So the idea was to have a simulator genre is pretty popular on Steam right now with games like whatever Supermarket Simulator doing super well.
Oh yeah.
So the idea was to do that, but about a water park. But then I think it was done accidentally. Somebody added the ability to push people there, and it turns out super funny when you push them and they ragdoll around and stuff. Yeah,
the ragdoll physics is funny, yeah.
Yeah, so we went with that, and it's kind of combination of a typical simulator game where you do chores and run around, run your water park, do stuff like this, but it also is kind of crazy and ridiculous and funny, so yeah.
And you've started working on this title not too long ago. It's in 2025. You've started working with K-Play, right?
Yeah, I've actually been working there just for under 3 months. So my title there is called art director, but I did not join the game from the start, so I did not like have the opportunity to set everything up. So I had to work with whatever was already present in the game. And also, I don't really do a lot of art direction in a classical sense, but more like I do everything art related because the team is very small, and this is where I have my advantage of having different skills from different like domains where I can do basically anything, and so I can handle most of the art related stuff in the game.
Yeah. This is why the art director qualification stands for you, because it's literally everything art guy.
Yeah, I mean, I do stuff like managing outsourcers and all that stuff.
Okay.
But also I do a lot of, like, in really big studios, an art director is a guy who probably does not do basically any hands-on work, but mostly maybe draws some concept art occasionally, but
just management, basically, right?
Most of the time, yeah, just telling everyone what they should do and so on.
Right.
But in this case, it's more about management, but also just handling everything. And this is the thing about very small teams, is that you cannot have very specialized people. I mean, maybe you can, but generally everyone needs to be very autonomous and be able to do everything on their own. And it's like people should understand well what is expected from them, what they need to do. You cannot just like wake up in the morning and open Jira or whatever and see your task and go on. You need to think about what you need to do. How would you do that? Maybe do stuff that was not planned, but you think it's a good idea, and so on. So yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, this was an issue with some previous employees where like some people were really good at what they do, but they kind of were not able to do everything autonomously.
Okay.
So, and when you have a small team, you cannot really spend a lot of time managing people, like spending a lot of time on calls and discussions and like guiding, like babysitting everyone, because it just, it won't work, you know.
Yeah, and how big of a team are we talking here?
There is 4 people in the core team, and there are also a bunch of outsourcers. I don't know how many. It's hard to count. It's like changes around, but not many. That's
a very small team, actually. 4 people in the core team.
Yeah.
And everything else comes from outsourcers,
yeah,
basically. You mostly outsource art, sound design, I suppose.
Yeah, like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
These kind of things. And I guess given the fact that the team is so small, the company is relatively young, right? And how long has the game been in development?
I'm not sure exactly. I think
approximately
the last summer maybe.
Last summer. Okay, so basically less than a year, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the projections? What is the goal of the game? Why I'm asking is because we have everything simulators today, as you've pointed out, supermarket simulators, this and that simulators. And some of those simulators are actually just have simulator in their name without actually simulating anything. I mean, the GOAT simulator thing that by Coffee Stain Studios is something that's more of a, provides comic value from the simulation, which is more of physics simulation with a GOAT doing ridiculous stuff. So there's a lot of simulators, and actually I know from my personal experience talking to many publishers in the last 5 years, there's a lot of room on the market for simulators. Why is this the case? I mean, we've started off with flight simulators, railway simulators, and all that, and ended up with water parks and supermarkets. What is happening on the market that people are so into these kind of things? What do you think?
I think the name of the genre, simulator, is a bit of misnomer occasionally, because like if you're talking about flight simulator, it is a simulator with, I haven't played it, but I assume you have a realistic like plane cockpit when you have all sorts of controls, you actually fly the plane, it actually simulates the experience. But with games like Supermarket Simulator, it does not simulate that much. It's kind of reminds you of the thing that it simulates, but again, like the name of the genre stuck because it's, I don't know, was used to call some things, but like these games are not really simulators in a classical sense when there is a realistic simulation that's made to simulate the thing accurately. For people to experience, like somebody wants to try flying a plane, they get to a flight simulator and they get some sort of like realistic experience. Most of the current games on the market are not really about that. And so yeah, and they just have a bunch of defining traits that were set up by like some games in the genre that did really well. And yeah, they don't really simulate that much.
Yeah, yeah, I suppose. So it's more of a something that you attribute to your game to emphasize that it's not exactly a game in an adventurous way, but rather, you know, see what water parks probably work like. You know, it's
like, you know, it happened to a lot of genres. Like you have roguelike, which is not really like the games are not really similar to Rogue, but to other games. But it's stuck. It's like now it's a useful descriptor, or like walking simulator, which was used as sort of mocking name for some games, but it also like now it's just it's used as a tag on Steam because it describes something, I guess. So people found it useful. So the same, I guess, happened to simulators. But it may be a bit confusing because there are some actual simulators, and then there are games that are simulator-like, I don't know, that are called simulators, but they do not really simulate anything.
Yeah, they don't really simulate, yeah. Okay, cool. I'm afraid we're at the very end of our session, so I would need to thank Igor Rashkuev for joining us here. So again, ladies and gentlemen, Igor Rashkuev from K-Play. An applause, please.